Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Zane. I wouldn't normally do so many other views, Zane other views, but you know what? I have been looking for the internet because of the video I did about what happened in Georgia about 2 weeks at least ago. At least 2 weeks ago. Nearing 2 weeks. And about the woman who got tased by a security guard in a mall. Now in my original video, which I will probably connect to this video, what I said in that video, I said simply, black people, and I'm not just talking about black women. This is what I've seen in the last couple of days since I put up my video. Now I got a couple of people who responded to and said I was right about what I said, and I thanked them for it, for at least responding, not about just being right about it. I am very happy that people consider what I say, my opinion, is good. But you know what? The thing that really upset me, I was looking at the different videos of the very same subject. And I can understand everyone has a different point of view. I'm not bashing nobody about it. But the thing that gets me is this. People who are trying to make others to understand their point of view and get them to see that what this woman did was wrong. That there's something wrong with the black race in its culture and its attitude in that culture. But the problem is that those very same people who are trying to educate you and trying to help you to see that there's a severe problem are no better. Because of one word that I see constantly. Now, I'm not bashing anyone who uses that word. They don't understand what it means to use it anymore. The older generation understands it, but you know what? There's a difference between the older generation and us, the younger generation. Even people in the 40s that I'm in, the people who are in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s, who are black or mixed black, just like I'm a mixed black man. The thing is that the ones who are 50s, 60s, or 70 had to live under a situation where they had almost no rights. And only recently, within the last 40 years, did they have much more better rights and privileges. Well, actually in the last 60 years, because in the 50s is when they finally allowed people to actually be able to vote and to go into schools that were separated. In other words, Brown versus the United States, or Brown versus the Board of Education. Sorry, my mistake. Brown versus the Board of Education. I think it was 1956 or 1957. I could be wrong about the date. You can check it for yourself. I'm not telling the exact date because I don't know it exactly. But putting it simply, when they decide to mix both races together in schools. And if you didn't see all the recordings that were ever made back in the 50s and 60s, how violent people were. Both sides. One side wanting freedom to be able to have the same rights and privileges as the other side that they are with, which is black and white. But the thing is, that brings me back to the older generation. They lived through actual violence a lot more than the younger generation has. And I'm not saying that in the 60s and in the 70s, even into the 80s, there hasn't been no racial violence where people have been shot and killed because of racism. But there was a difference. It wasn't law then. It is now. People at that time could not see what true change could become. After King died in 68, no one understood that yet. Not until the late 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, and until now did we see the fruit of the labor of all those people who worked their asses off. And I'm not just talking about all the poor black men and women. There were white people, a lot of times Jewish people, that went out there and said, please, we need to change because these people, they're no different than us. We're all the same. And as much as you're going to say, no, that ain't true, white Jewish people didn't do it. Yeah, they did. My mother was part of the movement just like everybody else. She went and did the Million Man March like everybody else back in the 60s. And she introduced me to those people that she knew that were there. That were willing to risk their lives and understand that anyone who was white back then was considered a traitor and were not liked or even killed. As much as you want to hang a black man, a white man is just as bad or worse, because that's betraying your race. But going back to what I'm saying, the one word that a lot of people have been using so much that don't see it yet, and the attitude to go with it, is one word, and you already probably figured out. It's the word nigger, or nigger, or negro. This is what people don't get it. What was said in that original video that brings this all to a head, that was in Atlanta, and this woman cursing at this security guard, saying, "What the fuck you gonna do, nigga?" It comes to this. Back during that time when we were fighting for freedom to express ourselves and have the same rights all around, and not just talking about black people, but for everybody. That's the reason why the Civil Rights Act was signed. It wasn't just for black people, it was for everyone. Eventually expanded beyond that, but that was the original civil rights law. And the thing about this is this. People have not understood that that word, and I've heard so many young people and people my age saying, "Dude, what the hell is wrong with you? It's slang now." And I say, really? If a white man says that to you in anger, is it still slang then? No, it isn't. It's considered racist. But if a fellow black man or woman says it to you, a lot of times you shrug it off like it's nothing. And that's done out of anger. Why? Can you explain it? They can't. You know why? They can't justify it because they don't know how. When it comes down to it, once you hear that word, that means black to a lot of people. Yo, my nigga, that's what I've been told. I said, dude, don't call me that. And I get insulted for it, saying, what's wrong? You don't want to be black? I said, it's not about being black. It's about what that word meant and what it still means. And people don't want to hear what it means until another race says it. When the day comes, when the very race that was forced to hear that word from another race finally understands that that word, no matter if you have embraced it as slang, is still being used. When the day comes you finally realize you need to stop using it, period, is when true racism begins to end. Because if the original race, who was forced to hear this word, from the original word they were first called as slave, Negro is the next step to slave. They just changed it to try and make it nicer. That's what Negro was. They had no basically identification with what Africans were, so they called them just basically what they were being used for, slave. Later they called them Negro, which is in Spanish for black. I don't speak Spanish, but it's not the point. That's where they derived the word from, black, Negro. But then it became more than just a classification of your skin color and where you came from. It became what they considered inferior, considered subhuman. At one point, while I forgot the man's name, because this is actually quite upsetting. As Darwin was coming up with his understanding of evolution, during that time, they considered black people a spin-off from the apes that was very underdeveloped. And they considered us another spin-off of apes, more developed. That was during the time of Darwin. It wasn't held, it wasn't kept long, but still it was spoke about. They considered the black race a spin-off of the apes that was not developed properly. This is the reason why I say this to people who are watching this. Listen to the word for what it is. One of the things that is the staple of the Afro or African American experience is to know that you're a nigger. And no one outside the race has the right to ever call you that. But everyone in your race has perfect right to call you that. Saying, what the hell, you're no different than me, nigga. What does that mean? It shows that everything that was ever said about our race, and I am a mixed man. I am black, Native American Chinese from my mother, and Puerto Rican from my father. I am black. No matter if you think I have to have a father who's black, it makes no difference. Both relatives make you who you are. And if you cannot understand the concept of what a word can do to a culture and do to the psychology of a person and the attitude of a person, then you need to reevaluate yourself. Every time you say that word, it just reinforces what you are. And here, not what I'm telling you, what you're telling yourself and what you tell your fellow black man and woman. What, you think you're better than me? You're nothing but subhuman. Who the hell you think you are? You're nothing. Your skin color is no different than me, subhuman. I'm just basically substituting nigger for subhuman and subhuman to nigger. It means the same thing. And if no one gets this yet, that is if they don't understand this concept, this is the reason why the culture is so bad right now. It's not because women, and I've been hearing this from several other different YouTube channels, oh, women are acting like this because, oh, they're on welfare and they're getting WIC and they think they can do whatever the hell they want. It's not that. It's not the fact that guys are out there smoking weed and going off and not wanting a job. It's not that directly. Neither one of them is. It's the simple fact that at the foundation of it, that every black man and woman who is willing to say that word believes himself and every other black man or woman is subhuman. And no matter what you say below, saying, man, you're so stupid, you don't get it, I'm right. And I'm willing to say it as someone who has that blood in them, no matter what color my skin is. And what the last of my name is, which is Spanish, unfortunately, because my biological father was Spanish. My mother's last name was Williams. My grandparents' name was Williams and Treadwell. I'm not pure Spanish. I am a mixed man that has a very rich culture, just like any black person or Afro or African American. I'm no different, but I've learned and I can see, unlike most that don't want to see it or want to hear it. You can talk slang all you want, no matter what race you are. I can talk whatever the hell I want, boy. The slang means nothing. It can have been from any different race. This could have came from white. It could have came from Asian. It could have came from Native American. It could have came from Pakistani. It makes no difference. The slang is nothing. The accent is nothing. But that one word is everything to the Afro-American society in this country. Africans back in Africa don't act like this. People from Nigeria don't act like this. People from Ethiopia doesn't act like this. And they're more darker skinned than most black people. They don't have that same type of mentality because they didn't have to go through the same thing that they did here. The situation in those cities and those countries was done under the European system, unlike American. So I say this to my fellow brothers and sisters who are Afro and African American, who have been using the nigger word for themselves, for their friends, for people they don't know, and people that they hate. Think about this very carefully. When you use that word, it brings down you, the person you're talking to, and the entire race and culture you come from. It means subhuman. That is the reason why most people don't think of themselves anymore. That's the reason why back in the 70s and 80s, people after Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were killed by their own fellow black men. People from their own race. They had no more interest. The civil rights movement ended. And they'll say, oh, what about the NAACP? What about civil rights? And what happened to the American Action Network? They exist, but not at the same heart as they had before, because their leaders were slain and people didn't care anymore. What did they do? They went into selling drugs. They went into taking drugs. They went into having a whole bunch of children and going on the government. And it was all because their great leaders who kept telling them, don't think of themselves as nothing than subhuman, but to think of yourselves as people, were taken out. I'm hoping that from now on people will understand this. Of course, there's always going to be someone that's going to say it, and an example. But if you can help not saying it other than an example of how your ancestors were and how people used to act, then you bring up your race, your culture, and yourself much better. I'm saying this as a person, not as a nigga. My mother always said, as long as you got one drop of black blood, you black. I am black, but I'm no nigger. I am no subhuman person. I am a person who believes in himself and believes that people one day will understand. And I'll probably be an old, great-ass man when that comes. That one day, that people are going to start talking to one another and someone's going to say, you know, our ancestors and a lot of people maybe 30 or 40 years ago used to say the word nigger to each other. And he says, what? They really did? And this is someone he didn't know. Say, yeah. They used to say it in slang. They used to say it in their music. I'm glad they stopped doing it. And then either they walk on talking about something else, or they separate and go their own separate ways. And the word is not used to describe themselves, and describe their friends, and to describe another person that they're trying to insult. And then the word is not even considered other than a word. Forgotten. As it's supposed to have been more than 200 years ago. Should have been stopped a long time ago. Slaves shouldn't have been used, but it was used. Negroes shouldn't have been used, but it was used. And right now, Negro or nigger is still being used. And hopefully the day will come, won't be used no more. So I hope people like this Zane's other view on my thoughts of what is wrong with black men and women. Subscribe and comment to Zane's view, and understand I do wrestling, but from time to time I do this. I hope you like this video. It is a lot longer than I expected. Sorry about that. And we're saying this clearly. I'm not trying to insult nobody, but I hope someone has understood what I'm saying. And I hope now you'll understand the next time you're thinking of saying that word to your friend, to just greet them, or to insult somebody, you'll actually think about it for a minute and say, you know what, I can just call him a motherfucker. Or I just call him my brother, or my dude, or whatever other type of word you can think of. Have a good night.